these artists had manual jobs, and they did art because they were moved by the muse to do art. It was on them. And that's what art is, isn't it? It's a gift from the gods. Art is about human consciousness. It's one of the things that make us human.
Despite the immense turmoil in South Africa while covering the Soweto uprising in 1976, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Les Payne collected artworks by artists who lived and worked in the Black township. On June 16, 1976, the uprising was a violent result of student protests against apartheid. As a writer for a local Long Island newspaper, Payne asked his editor for permission to go to South Africa to cover the violent protest.
While I was there, I was struck by some of the art that I saw there, and then I began, in addition to writing the stories, I was filing stories every day and covering the slaughter and covering the demonstrations and covering the very, very oppressive and turbulent time that was going on in South Africa. And in between time, you know, I found time to begin collecting. I bought two major pieces of art, brought them back, and then that's what started the collection.
Selected portions of the collection of Violet and Les Payne are on display at the Godwin Turnback Museum on the campus of Queens College. Against apartheid rule and South African principles, the artists attended schools in Johannesburg to receive official art training. Art supplies were scarce, but their desire to be artists inspired their drawings.
Their job was not to be an artist. I mean, they were not in Greenwich. There was no Greenwich Village where they could, you know, art and go and shop. They had to work, and then the muse for them to paint and to draw was so strong that they found time. You know, at night they had candle, they had no electricity, the houses were not electrified, they had candlelight. They would somehow scrounge up, they would use pencils, pen and ink, paper, they couldn't afford canvas initially, and then they began to draw.
Really, it's amazing because they had so little access to resources and very little training except from collectives that they put together themselves. Some of these works are just so moving and so beautiful. And it's interesting too to see how stylistically they hold together. Each of the artists has a very unique style of their own.
This is what art does. It captures one's life. If that person can draw and develop this, what you will learn that this technique is as good as any technique in the world. They're as good as any European artist, any Scandinavian artist, any Australian artist. I mean, this is art, pure and simple, of the highest level. And what they should see in unfolding here is also what life was like in the township of Soweto during the time when these artists lived and worked and created. Now, a lot of these pieces were done because they were driven to do it, but the police would confiscate and arrest people who would do this kind of work.
In his most recently self-published book, White Power, Black Revolt, co-edited by his children, Payne takes readers through his 11-part series that appeared in the newspaper about the 1976 student uprising, a time that spurred the end of apartheid in South Africa.
It's a history, a historical perspective of what they have not been able to capture, but they look at that book, The White Power, Black Revolt, as being, a recapture of that time. It is the complete collection of the series that appeared in Newsday back in 1976.
As a child, Payne was encouraged by his mother to fully appreciate art, and his deep passion for art and his compassion for African culture results in these artworks on display.
He had an appreciation of art that was unusual, I have to say. Most people don't really understand fine art, or many people don't understand fine art.
Hanging art is an art. There's an art to hanging art. And so when I came here, I see it in a new light because I've seen it, at home, and I'm familiar, obviously, with all the pieces. I bought them. But to see them unfold the way they have it here, that's a whole nother game of the art. There's an artistic endeavor to that. So I'm hugely impressed with the lighting, the way they have it situated, the way the pieces are relating to each other, and the way the exhibit unfolds. And then at age 22, he went to an ANC meeting, ANC, African National Congress, Nelson Mandela's group.
To view the art collection of Violet and Les Payne and the artists of Soweto, go to qc.cuny.edu. For Push Pause in Queens, this is Archie Snowden.